A storm is brewing over Disney's live-action Snow White remake, and it's now spiraled into a high-pressure legal showdown.
Jonah Platt, whose father helped produce the latest Snow White film, had some very harsh words for star Rachel Zegler.
For context, Variety wrote a report recently titled "Inside Disney's Snow White Fiasco: Death Threats, Beefed Up Security, and a Social Media Guru" for Rachel Zegler. Evie Magazine wrote on X, "When you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself."
According to insider leaks, Rachel Zegler has reportedly been pulled into an urgent meeting with Disney's legal team. The emergency gathering was allegedly triggered by mounting tension between the actress and the company, centered around possible breaches of contract, brand damage, and the looming threat of litigation.
Rachel Zegler just keeps making things worse with the Walt Disney Company. The more that she tries to defend this movie, the more that she tries to spew her agenda onto the general public, it's only making matters worse. Not just for Bob Iger, but for whatever is left of the image of Disney as a whole.
It's just the latest twist in a project already plagued by box office disasters, internet outrage, and internal disagreements. For months, whispers have circulated about who exactly should take the blame for the film's implosion. Fingers have been pointed in every direction: executives, actors, even passionate fans. But now, with Zegler directly in the legal crosshairs, she finds herself at the heart of the meltdown. The high-stakes meeting raises major questions about how a film once billed as a modern Disney crown jewel could unravel into such chaos.
I am in the thick of rehearsals for Romeo plus Juliet, so I'm going to get out of here. Bye for now. The Variety story notes how a couple of minutes after posting this, she replied to her own tweet and wrote, "And always remember, free Palestine."
It also sends a clear signal to everyone watching. In the current climate, both fame and brand power can buckle under the weight of public pressure and internal discord. This unexpected legal escalation follows earlier reports that Disney has been quietly exploring ways to recover from the film's financial freefall and critical collapse. Initial chatter hinted that leading stars, Zegler included, might have violated their promotional responsibilities or made remarks that clashed with the legacy of the 1937 original. But now, sources close to the actress suggest there's more to the story. Some are claiming internal sabotage and corporate power struggles played a larger role in derailing the movie than anything Zegler may have said in public.
Variety breaks down how after this tweet went viral, the studio was shocked that she would mix a promo tweet with a political statement. As a result, Mark Platt flew to New York to speak with her in person.
Her sudden sit-down with Disney's attorneys seems to confirm that things have reached a boiling point. If private negotiations break down, the studio could be preparing to take a far more aggressive legal stance. And this isn't just about one film, it's about the broader consequences for studios and stars alike. The struggle for narrative control, especially when millions of dollars and reputations are at stake, may be defining the next era of Hollywood. For Disney, the risks, both financially and reputationally, could hardly be more severe. The original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs wasn't just a hit, it was a cornerstone of Disney's rise to cultural dominance and a historic milestone in animation.
Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged. Zegler isn't the only one who has made political statements, though. Her co-star Gal Gadot, who plays the Evil Queen, expressed her staunch support for Israel.
Naturally, expectations for the remake were sky high. A blockbuster budget, a celebrity-filled cast, and a script pitched as a fresh update for modern audiences. Instead, the result was a sobering disaster. Critics lambasted the film for straying too far from its beloved roots, while longtime fans accused the studio of sacrificing timeless magic for fleeting trends.
Snow White's budget was around $240 to $270 million. It has made $43 million domestically so far and around $84 million globally per Box Office Pro.
Panic reportedly set in at Disney headquarters when it became clear this wasn't just a flop, it was a threat to the prestige of one of the company's most iconic franchises. Calling in Rachel Zegler for an emergency legal discussion suggests Disney is scrambling on two fronts: trying to control the PR damage while bracing for internal drama to erupt into courtroom drama. And beyond the headlines, the situation underscores something deeper: the razor-thin line between reinventing a classic and alienating the audience that made it legendary in the first place.
The film received backlash for various reasons in the lead up to its release. Zegler had called the original Snow White movie dated and weird and said Prince Charming was a stalker.
Sources familiar with the situation claim Rachel Zegler didn't walk into Disney's legal offices unprepared. Accompanied by her own legal team, the actress reportedly anticipated a tense confrontation. At the heart of Disney's concerns lies how her interviews and social media posts portrayed cherished elements of the original 1937 classic. Observers speculate that the studio may be compiling a case that her comments, such as calling the prince creepy or describing certain story elements as outdated, violated a clause requiring cast members to respect and uphold the Disney legacy.
Evie Magazine wrote on X, when you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself.
But Zegler's camp isn't backing down. Her representatives insist that Disney itself encouraged the cast to lean into the film's modern, progressive messaging. Now, that same messaging is being weaponized against her. What was once seen as a bold, forward-thinking stance is suddenly being rebranded as insubordination, if Disney chooses to interpret it that way. This situation raises larger questions about accountability, especially when creative direction originates from the studio, but the fallout lands on the talent. As Zegler tiptoes through this legal tightrope, attention is also turning toward Gal Gadot, who's faced quieter but still persistent criticism for seemingly avoiding direct commentary on the film's controversies.
So now, as the movie comes out, the two biggest stars in this movie can't stand each other to the point where they can't be in the same room, which forced Disney, in their infinite wisdom, to cut back on doing a formal premiere.
While she hasn't yet been summoned to any publicized legal session, industry insiders suspect similar conversations may already be underway in private. Rumors suggest Gadot's contract also includes media cooperation and brand protection clauses, language that could expose her to legal scrutiny if Disney decides to widen its net.
I mean, he's totally right. Now, of course, as we covered, the movie is terrible anyway in its own right. It was probably going to underperform regardless. People are tired of the soulless cash grab remake thing.
For now, all eyes remain fixed on Zegler, who appears to be Disney's legal priority. And it serves as a sharp reminder, no matter how big the star, no one is above the fine print when a film tanks this hard. The situation exposes a deeper truth within the entertainment industry. A-listers may enjoy influence, but studios still wield the power of contracts, especially when millions are on the line and reputations are in free fall. Long before the legal alarms went off, there were already red flags behind the scenes. Early test audiences had warned that the film's attempt to modernize the narrative stripped it of the whimsical charm that made the original magical. Character changes were so dramatic that the iconic dwarfs were either entirely removed or radically reimagined, sparking internal concern before the public ever saw a frame.
And not only are the dwarves gone in the remake, they've been replaced by what Disney is now calling magical creatures. Snow White and the Seven Magical Creatures. Disney wouldn't even cast people with actual dwarfism to play the roles of the seven dwarfs. And the new magical creatures are also completely computer-generated.
These internal warnings turned out to be prophetic. The moment the first trailers hit the internet, backlash erupted. Social media exploded with outrage, with fans accusing Disney of gutting the essence of Snow White in favor of agenda-driven storytelling. Some were upset by the overt social commentary, others mourned the disappearance of the classic's fairy tale heart. And amid the growing noise, Zegler's soundbites, often mocking the original film's romantic themes, were clipped, shared, and mocked endlessly online, turning her into the face of the backlash.
The movie has all kinds of problems that could be pinned partly on the producer. Like, the producer did not do a good job. Nobody who produced this movie did a good job.
The whole saga drives home a brutal Hollywood truth. Viral outrage can obliterate years of planning and tens of millions in investment. And when that outrage has a face, even one of the film's stars, the fallout can be swift, severe, and very, very public. Rachel Zegler is no longer staying silent. As accusations pile up suggesting she was the driving force behind Snow White's collapse, the actress is reportedly pushing back hard. Leaked internal communications now indicate that Disney itself instructed cast members to portray this version of Snow White as a bold, modern heroine.
There's no doubt that she drove the final nail into this movie's coffin. She probably drove the final 2 or 3 nails into the coffin.
The promotional materials even included talking points that deliberately distanced the remake from the romantic and gender conventions of the 1937 original. In light of these disclosures, Zegler is said to feel unfairly targeted. From her perspective, she was simply echoing Disney's own messaging strategy, one crafted by the studio's marketing experts. If that's true, then the company's current attempt to pin blame on her rings hollow.
And a lot of what you see with Zegler is really just this pretty common Gen Z mentality and approach to work.
Still, the emergency meeting suggests that Disney may be preparing to escalate matters further, possibly seeking financial compensation or damage control if talks break down. This all points to a larger issue. Actors can be left dangerously exposed when the creative direction they're told to champion is later walked back by the very studio that approved it. The shifting tides of public opinion and brand protection can turn yesterday's team players into today's scapegoats.
She believes that she should be able to express herself and speak her truth or whatever nonsense, regardless of the consequences to everybody else.
Behind the scenes, the finger-pointing isn't limited to the cast. According to multiple insiders, deep divisions within Disney leadership were present from the beginning. One group reportedly wanted a complete reinvention of the story, while others warned that stripping away beloved elements, like the dwarfs, the romantic core, and the storybook charm, could alienate Disney's most loyal families. Zegler has even hinted at internal sabotage, claiming that certain executives may have deliberately undermined the project, potentially for political or personal gain.
In reality, you have a job. You're getting paid to do this job. You signed on the dotted line. You took on the role. You took the job. And that job comes with certain basic responsibilities.
Regardless of who was right, the result was a fractured vision and a final product that left audiences confused and disappointed. If conflicting agendas within the executive ranks contributed to the film's collapse, critics are now asking, why is the studio leaning so heavily on legal action instead of acknowledging its own role? This situation shines a light on the tangled web of competing interests that exist under the Disney brand. When so many forces push in different directions, even a legacy project can veer off course. And the fallout isn't limited to creative circles.
And one of the most basic is the responsibility to control yourself and comport yourself a certain way publicly so that you don't harm the project and thereby harm all the hundreds of other people who are working on it.
Disney's shareholders are reportedly growing restless. Some view the Snow White debacle as a red flag, a warning that the studio's once reliable strategy of remaking animated classics may be losing its magic. The fear that alienating lifelong fans could fracture the cross-generational loyalty Disney has spent nearly a century building. If the company now chooses to penalize or scapegoat someone like Rachel Zegler, it risks more than just a legal headache. It could trigger a full-blown identity crisis. Should Zegler go public and claim the studio broke its own rules or turned on its cast, the backlash could intensify an already fragile moment.
Because she's not well, she might be stupid, but she's not so dumb that she didn't realize that by, for example, coming out and saying that all Trump supporters deserve to suffer.
In the end, this entire spectacle reveals just how quickly even the most beloved entertainment empire can stumble into scandal, especially when it's accused of abandoning the very values that built it in the first place. Adding more fuel to the already raging fire are leaked internal documents that offer a striking glimpse into the apparent confusion within Disney's leadership. Some emails reportedly reveal that executives had been uneasy about the film's creative direction for months, long before the public backlash erupted. These concerns, however, went unaddressed.
Entertain, not send messaging as Snow White sales compete for worst performing live-action Disney adaptation ever.
Other messages show how the marketing department quickly shifted gears when online negativity surged, with instructions to reduce Rachel Zegler's visibility in promotional materials. But by then, it was too late. Her face and voice were already tied to controversial quotes about replacing outdated tropes, making her the most visible and vulnerable target once the tide turned. If these internal communications surface in any official proceedings, possibly sparked by the recent emergency legal meeting, they could shed light on whether Zegler was simply following Disney's lead before being left out to dry. Insiders say this email trail may expose just how suddenly and drastically the studio changed its game plan, raising serious questions about whether her statements were approved by higher-ups until things went south.
But more importantly, here's a video that Rachel Zegler posted inside of the theater. She hang out with. So one, she's cheering for herself, and then she's laughing like a retarded donkey hyena hybrid, and she's squealing and clapping for herself in an empty theater.
Once again, this speaks to a broader issue, how misaligned strategies and reactive PR can backfire spectacularly, especially when the talent becomes the public face of a failed campaign. Many observers now argue that the blame shouldn't fall on one person. The radical reworking of Snow White's iconic themes, the impossible task of satisfying both progressive viewers and nostalgic purists, the fatigue of endless remakes, and the heavy reliance on star power all converged into a textbook example of how not to handle a legacy reboot.
And they're acting as though like, oh, you should know what a huge movie star she is, and she looks completely hideous here, is perfection. They think they're like doing a trend, or they think they're making snappy content. What it really is just adding to the total humiliation where the people at the theater don't even know who the new Disney princess is.
2 tickets, please.
For which movie?
Zegler, once hailed for her breakout performance in West Side Story, was expected to breathe youthful life into a cherished fairy tale. But that same fresh, candid energy may have magnified the controversy, especially if she was echoing studio-approved messages that clashed with traditional expectations. Now that lawyers are involved, it remains to be seen whether both sides can strike a compromise or whether the standoff will intensify, further staining an already troubled production. This situation once again highlights a core tension in Hollywood. Bold creative risks can lead to stunning reinvention or catastrophic backlash. And sometimes, it's both at once. To Disney's devoted fan base, watching this unfold has been nothing short of surreal.
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable. There's some clip of her on the internet in her Snow White outfit saying, "Every hour I am in the outfit of Snow White wearing the dress. All 18 hours, I deserve to be paid for every single one." Oh, really? Are you having trouble paying your bills, Rachel? Did Steven Spielberg not pay you for your role in West Side Story? Did Disney fail to give you a healthy paycheck for, like, cry me a river? She's just exactly everything that we can't stand.
For many, the chaos surrounding Snow White feels completely out of sync with the magic and optimism the brand has long represented. Social media is flooded with posts mourning the downfall of what was once the studio's crown jewel, now reduced to a cautionary tale of corporate confusion and misguided modernization. Some longtime fans are demanding a full overhaul of Disney's live-action strategy, pushing for more faithful adaptations instead of bold reinventions. Others remain sympathetic to change, acknowledging that times evolve, but even they express frustration over the studio's mishandling of the rollout and its stars. At the center of it all stands Rachel Zegler, whose tense legal meeting has become symbolic of a much bigger issue: whether Disney, in defending its brand, is willing to alienate the very people it once trusted to lead its stories.
1.9 out of 10 on IMDb, and those, by the way, they weren't dwarves, they were called bandits. So the Snow White doesn't, like, the amount of, like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Leave it the f alone. Yeah, that's it. If it ain't broke, break it. Like, leave these stories alone. If she, by the way, if she never opened her mouth and she didn't do all this nonsense, people would have gone and watched the movie. They would have made their money, but then people would have been disappointed after the math.
And that's the real turning point. The studio's reputation, polished over nearly a century, is now being tested not by fantasy villains or box office flops, but by internal fractures and public missteps. The bigger question remains: has Disney's sprawling machine grown too massive and unwieldy to reliably deliver the kind of heartfelt, cohesive storytelling that built its empire in the first place? At the same time, industry insiders believe Rachel Zegler's next move could be a game changer. If she emerges from her meeting with a more diplomatic, measured approach, it may signal that both sides are aiming to quietly de-escalate and sidestep a full-blown legal confrontation, one that could drag more uncomfortable truths into the spotlight.
Do you know, like, how hard it is to find an attractive young woman in Hollywood who can act and sing. It's not hard. Like, who just isn't going to offend half the country. There'll be 25,000 more just like her knocking on the same doors that she had open to her. She had the opportunity of a lifetime. And instead of being humble and grateful, she was entitled and a snot. And I will look forward to her not getting cast in any more movies for a long time until she actually does learn something about humanity and humility.
But if Zegler decides to stand her ground and assert that she merely followed the studio's lead, especially if she presents written proof backing that claim, the fallout could spiral, potentially derailing any effort by Disney to recover its reputation or distance itself from the controversy. This situation perfectly illustrates the double-edged nature of star power. Celebrities can be valuable assets in a marketing campaign until they feel used or betrayed. In today's social media-driven world, those same stars can flip the narrative, rallying public support and turning the tables on the studios they once served. Again, the broader message here is unmistakable. In the modern age of Hollywood, power dynamics are shifting. Big studios no longer control the story unchallenged. What started as a straightforward attempt to update a beloved fairy tale has now exploded into a complex legal and reputational crisis, one few could have foreseen. Rachel Zegler's emergency session with Disney's legal team might be just the beginning. It could lead to a high-profile lawsuit, a quiet settlement, or even a broader industry reckoning on how studios and stars navigate public controversies.
So Rachel Zegler has now decided to turn off replies on Instagram following major backlash over the Snow White movie because she is getting completely roasted in all of her comments on Instagram. Everyone is roasting her. Everyone is calling her out for her being one of the key players for why this movie is failing as badly as it is.
No matter which road this story takes, the Snow White remake has already become a cautionary tale, warning the entire entertainment world about the dangers of chasing cultural relevance while clinging to treasured brand identities. It's a delicate tightrope, and Disney's stumble may change how future remakes are approached, marketed, and managed. As the situation continues to evolve, both fans and analysts remain glued to every development. Will Zegler manage to clear her name amid the finger-pointing? Will Disney push for damages, setting a new legal precedent that actors can be held accountable for disappointing public reception? And how, if at all, will the company attempt to restore what's left of Snow White's magic? Each new detail has the potential to tip the balance, sparking more speculation and shaping long-term consequences for everyone involved. What was once a fairy tale has now morphed into a real-world power struggle, where corporate strategy, legal contracts, and personal reputations collide. Rachel Zegler's emergency meeting is no longer just a footnote. It's a pivotal moment in a much larger story, one that might ultimately serve as either a roadmap or a warning for how Hollywood grapples with nostalgia, shifting fan expectations, and the unforgiving glare of public opinion in an ever-changing cultural landscape.